everyone. I'm Dr. András Rung, founder and CEO of Ergomania Digital Product Design, and we are the main organizer of today's event. And today's event is about financial UX for business and corporate users. It means that from very small business users to bigger one, how the UX is handled for this kind of institutions and companies. And today we will have two program slots. One of them is a presentation by Bartlema and Amidi from Eward is from TreasurUp by Rabobank, and Maria is from our company Ergomania, and they will talk about why you need a design system, and we will show that how the design system was implemented for TreasurUp and what were the steps and the motivations for this project. And in the other part, we will talk about with experienced leaders, Eward from Netherlands, Glenn from Belgium, Martin from Austria, and Gergely, Balázs, and Maria from Hungary. And we will have a discussion about that, what is the state of the art of the financial UX in the business field. And we're very excited that whether they will agree on everything or what will be their opinion about this topic. And also, we are very curious about your feedback and your comments. So we have several channels where you can chat and talk with us. We have a main chat where you can write whatever it's on your mind. We have a LinkedIn channel where you can share your contacts and try to new friends to LinkedIn, or you can start a business chat with other people here as well. And we have a Q&A section where you can post your questions, and we will handle either in the group talk with the panelists, or we will try to answer them in a written form that nobody's questions will be unanswered. And now we will move soon to the presentation, but before that I would mention that after the panel discussion, we will have an informal conversation or chat. So you can meet other people who are coming to our meetup, or you can talk with the panelists or the presenters personally. So I think it's a great opportunity to meet those people and make new valuable connections, or ask questions even personally if you're a bit shy or you feel so better. And now I will give the word to Maria and Eward, that they will talk about this FinTech case study, or the design system was formed for TreasurUp, and please give a virtual applause to them, and I hope that it will be very interesting for all of you. Thank you. Maria, please.
Just a second, I'm sharing my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. Very well welcome from me as well. We are delighted to have so many people today. The first presentation is about how we started to form a design system for TreasurUp. I'm Maria Amidi Nouri, UX designer and product manager in Ergomania. And today we will have a joint presentation, and we will walk you through an in-house case study on how we could form a design system for a FinTech case study. Basically, the main highlights of the presentation are what is TreasurUp, what a design system is, and why you need one. How did we start to form the structure of the TreasurUp application? What is the structure of the design system? And how did we manage the team and the processes, considering that we were working in 4 different countries? What are the outputs, and how we are planning to continue our mutual cooperation with TreasurUp. Now we will start off with the introduction of TreasurUp. Please welcome on stage Eward.
Okay. but I sort of assume it is. Let me share my screen. All right, so before we will dive into the creation of a design system and into our company, TreasurUp, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Eward Bartlema. I've been working for 4 years now at TreasurUp as a head of growth and UX. And TreasurUp is a FinTech startup from Rabobank. We're in the business of helping banks offer better online treasury solutions. And we do that by offering them or creating online treasury products on web and mobile. And we are offering them as a license to partner banks. And might surprise you, but we only have 4 clients, but those are major clients, namely Rabobank, the Finnish OP Bank, and the Belgian KBC, and Nordea and the Nordics. And more banks will follow soon. Those banks pay a license fee to us, and in return, they can use the platform in their own market, in their own look and feel, and really, professionalize their online treasury offering. More than 5,000 corporates are currently using the TreasurUp platform, and those range from very small retailers to publicly listed companies. We are very happy with our monthly notional flows. It's more than 600 million euros go through our platform every month. And of course, even more satisfied with our high customer satisfaction scores. We are active in 8 different countries, and there's more than 30 FTE working at TreasurUp. So that's a brief summary of me and what TreasurUp does. I think Maria is going to tell you all about the theory behind the design system.
Okay. Okay, hopefully my screen is loading slowly. Before I start off and define what a design system is actually, I would like to walk you through a journey. It happens in any organization, as it happened in the TreasurUp organization, that after an initial success, the team, the product owners, and the stakeholders decide to enhance the product, whether it's for the customers, for the partners, or for the employees. In this case, 2 things might occur, and these are 2 often circumstances around the organizations. That first of all, the designers can spend a disappropriate amount of time on recreating already existing UI elements instead of spending that time in proper UX research, defining the usability problems of the product, and to conduct usability tests. The second thing that might happen, that each developer may favor a certain coding libraries, syntactical methods. And if this is unchecked and unmarked, it can quickly result to an unagile ecosystem. And instead of having sprints which are lasting 1 week, we could lead to having sprints which are lasting for weeks or even months. The 2 factors what I've mentioned conspire together, and they result in very expensive products. Even small inconsistencies in components, interaction patterns, and communication can affect the success rate of any organization. Just a simple example, in the aviation realm, if a part of a plane is missing, all the flights connected to that plane should be cancelled, and this will result in loss in revenue. And what the design system actually does is that it's addressing these issues. So design is relationships between the way we make and we think, relationships between the people we work with. Each designer has different definition of design, relationships between product and users. And all of these relationships are driven by small decisions that we make over time. Design is not about designers, but it's about to measure whether we have solved problems for people and their environment. With so many decisions to make, we will need a system that could govern those decisions. As I mentioned, small problems in decision making could result to unagile ecosystem. Designers are in relationship with the design system, and the companies are asking the designers to facilitate the complex decision making for the products, screens and flows, data models, machine learning, business model, etc. So what is a design system after we understood the relationships between the different parts? In a nutshell, design system is a single source of truth. A design system is essentially a standardized, centralized, and reusable collection of user interface components, visual styles, usage guidelines, and code that are all aligned. Design system is not only a UI kit or a style guide, but it's a shared language that we use for the product team. Often I'm asked this question, how do we know that the design system is going to a right direction and whether we are on track or not? Well, design systems should compose of four main ingredients. Principles are the values that drive the ecosystem that we are defining. Guidelines are the best practices, the do's and the don'ts, how to start implementing those values into the system. Patterns are the meat and the potato of the design system, the componentry. And practices are, first of all, how to keep the design system alive and relevant. Design system has to grow with the ecosystem that it serves, and the practices define how they can happen. Who can use a design system? Well, everybody within the organization can use a design system, starting off from back-end, front-end developers to business analysts to requirement engineers to UX copywriters, UI, and stakeholders can use a design system. It's a documentation that everybody can find the necessary information that you are looking for. So why do you need a design system? As I've mentioned earlier, it's a single source of truth, and it reduces QA efforts, quality assurance efforts, if you may. It increases consistency, which leads to a higher quality production. It reduces redundancy, and it makes it easier to potentially adjust new technologies. It's a prestige and marketing for the company, for the brand, and it's a useful reference. It leads to faster production, and of course, it reduces technical debt. And since we are all the time expanding our products, it's a foundation, it's a future foundation to rely on. I give back now the word to Eward to continue with the presentation.
It's always a little bit of a struggle to do this digitally in this bloody Corona age, but
yeah,
try to make it work.
I can hear you, Eward. You're good.
Good. I'm trying to share my screen. But that doesn't matter because we'll make it do anyway. So why did we decide to create a design system? So I started out with 5 people. Unfortunately, not in a garage with pizzas and everything you just assume that goes with the startup lifestyle, but in a decent bank office, but nonetheless with a small group of people. And that also meant that design was really done by one person only, and it wasn't even me. It was by a good designer. It was basically a one-man army who designed our initial pages. And our application back then, and we're talking about 2016, was a lot smaller than it is now, of course. We quickly then moved on into this style guide phase, and the style guide for us was merely basically a PDF, 10 pages with the fonts defined, the color codes, and some of the basic UI elements. So we used that PDF file to really build up the core of our application. And at a certain point, we really transitioned to this whole phenomenon that we call a design system. There were a bunch of reasons for that. We started to work with more and more designers, and they were a bunch of creative people, and we love creativity. But since we were launching new features every month, we saw that whenever they designed new features, they would always introduce new components and new ideas that looked fabulous, but made our total application a little bit inconsistent. So there was a lot of inconsistency. We also had to deal with a lot of UX discussions. And this is why I'm quite envious of for instance, developers, because usually when developers have ideas, the creative people don't know how to argue with that, but everybody has some sort of sense or some taste when it comes to design. So we also had internally a lot of UX discussions that resolved around taste. So not very effective. And when we had those discussions, and then if we came to conclusions, those conclusions were usually poorly captured. Because we were all at very busy jobs, we sometimes forgot the outcomes, so we started all over again. But luckily, there's the shining man in the shining suit, Andras, who had a presentation in Amsterdam about, I think it was the 7 deadly sins of FinTech UX. So if you're interested in that content, I would recommend you to contact him. But it was quite inspirational. So we thought, like we do with all people and companies that show interesting stuff for us. Let's connect and see how things are working out. Are there any projects that you might can do for us? And well, that's how it started. Ergomania quickly pitched the idea of having a design system with all the good reasons.
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me?
I can.
Unfortunately, could you please try to reshare your screen again, because for some reason we don't see your presentation.
That is very sad to hear. Okay, I'm gonna share my entire screen. Is this better?
Just a second, it takes a few seconds to upload.
Yeah, it will be nice for him.
Otherwise, we have to improvise. Oh. Now I sort of don't see my screen anymore.
Something was happening before. I think if you give it one more shot, it will be successful, hopefully.
All right, final attempt.
Okay, now it's good.
Yeah?
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay, so I should start all over again at the conclusion.
I think it would be nice if you could.
No worries. Well, I think my audio was still correct, right? I'm just assuming it was. But
yes, the audio is perfect, and now we can see your screen. So
We can even see you also.
Slowly getting
great.
there.
Yeah, the visuals are more supportive anyway than they were explanatory, but it's fine. So as I said, within those 4 years, I witnessed the transition from becoming a professional UX-driven company, starting with a style guide and one person who did everything. And the rest of the slides are, to be quite honest, more supportive anyway. So I think we can move on if you're okay. And we are actually sharing this presentation afterwards, right? Otherwise, we sort of have to. And Maria, I think it's your turn to discuss the steps that we took.
Yes, I'm just trying to connect meanwhile, Eward. Just a second. Yes, something is happening. Okay, I hope everybody can see my screen. So when we wanted to start off forming the structure of the TreasurUp applications, we took certain steps. The first step was to have an investigation on the current processes and the team structure, and to identify where we can be the most value and where we could help the most. As any other operation, we had to make sure that we have a transparent workflow and that we could have a framework that everybody's responsibilities and challenges and basically all the processes was visible. Second off, we invested time on a UI inventory to see what are the pre-existing components, existing modules, and what is the scope of ambition for new modules. In this part, we could also identify the inconsistencies, the scalability problems, the usability problems, and it helped us later on to prioritize our strategy. The third step that we took, that we had to basically form a high-level principles within the team in order to make sure that the TreasurUp main objectives are met. And last but not least, we had meetings with the stakeholders in order to define the short-term and the long-term goals of the product and to establish a certain deadline that within 1 or 2 months we could have results and they could see the return of investment and why they could basically how they could profit from having a design system. After these steps, we basically put together the structure of TreasurUp design system. As you see, it's consisting of 6 main chapters. We had to make sure that the structure is within the scope, so the work is accomplishable in a reasonable time frame. We also made sure about the technical feasibility and the independence, and of course, the marketing potential that it would hopefully excite all of the members in the team to use the design system. Based on the usability issues, what we found earlier, and after discussing with the TreasurUp team, we decided together to start off with the UX foundations. UX foundations it's actually one of the most important chapters in any design system, and it's answering questions like how do we group certain features, what are the behavior rules of the components, how to decide which kind of navigation to use, and so on. After UX Foundations, we continued with the UI elements. UI elements was also quite related to the UX Foundations chapter, and basically it was the chapter that would help us to reach the short-term goals what we defined. For the UI elements, we chose the atomic design system consisting of 5 distinct stages: atoms, molecules, organism, templates, and pages. And it answers questions like what are the maximum dimensions of a drop-down menu, what type of buttons to use, what are the behavior rules of those buttons, and so on. On this slide, you can see some of the outputs of the design system. We started off putting all the documentation in a Google document, and we made sure that internally in the design system there is a very good navigation. So, for instance, if I'm the developer and I want to code a module, I can go to the templates, I can see the components that are related to that template, I can see the behavior rules, the UX guidelines, and what I need to continue. So having a design system in a way that all the components are interlinked is one of the most important things for its usage. Gina Ann, a design system expert, has a very good quote that is a favorite quote of mine, that the design system informs our product design informs the design system. This shows the cycle between the components and the products. Systems which are mostly containing of atoms, molecules, organisms, and product which is consisting of templates and pages. As I mentioned earlier on, we were working in 4 different locations. Eward at the time was in Taiwan. The stakeholders and the product owners in Utrecht in the Netherlands, the UI team and the development team in Cluj, Romania, and us, the UX team in Budapest. In order to make sure that we are all aligned and we are on the same page all the time, we had to keep the communication up. We were having stakeholders meetings. We defined the transparent workflow, as I described earlier. We were having daily stand-ups, weekly reviews, client workshops, and a lot of checkup during the day. Here you also can see some of the tools that we used for communication, documentation, and design. Of course, like any project, we faced a lot of challenges, and the main challenge was that as long as the system is working, everybody is saying that the feature works, so it must be good. And people, they cannot see the main difference between the design and a poorly coded version of a screen. And the focus is always to speed up and to deliver the products faster. What we took into consideration, and that was one of our main principles in the design system, that we had the plan, do, check, and act methodology when we were optimizing our UX strategy and proposing new optimizations for existing modules or for the new modules. We always brought in the developers, the business analyst, the architect, engineer, in order to make sure that the solutions what we are proposing would fit into the team's effort. Likewise, the developers and the UI team also included us in checking the final screens which were coded in terms of visual quality, having sufficient state and variations, responsiveness, content flexibility, and functionality. And of course, all of these had a tremendous effect in reducing the cost for product development. Here is a quote from Carmen. She was the requirement engineer in the development team in Cluj, and she shared with us that we have basically reached that point that the developer could go to the design system, see the module that they need to code, and they could easily find everything what is related to that. And it reduced a lot of debate and saved a lot of time for them. We were working remotely with the TreasurUp team, and here I just wanted to share one personal meeting what we had with Eward in Utrecht in March 22, before the lockdown began. And I give back now the word to Eward.
Eward, do you hear us? Are you
Attempt.
great? Thank you. We just don't hear you at the moment, but we see you at least.
Test, test, test. You should be hearing me. You don't?
Yes, yes, yes.
You do hear me?
Yeah.
If you cannot hear me, then it's... Yeah? I'm allowed to continue? Okay. Let's continue. Sorry for the rocky start. I have a few more notes on the whole process. First of all, when you start doing a design system project, it's good to define your level of ambition. And of course, that depends on where you stand as a company, but we were already scaling up. So we had quite a system in place already. So we decided that we would reuse 80% of the old stuff that was already in place and aim for 20% new stuff, so that we would not be too much of a burden for all the engineers in our team. And we said that every agreement that we make in the design system has a sort of an expiration date of 2 to 3 years. So after that, we would try to see if we had to upgrade the whole thing. And I already saw a question in the Q&A about how to deal with updates and new functionalities with the design system. We actually do have a dedicated update page where we highlight all the new updates that we bring into the design system. But this is, of course, the biggest challenge for a scaling company, because if you are like us, you will introduce new features with high frequencies. And new features sometimes means new molecules and elements that your developers have to use. So we do have a strict update policy in there. And when you start choosing the platform on which you want to host your design system, there's quite a bunch of options out there. And this is a comparison website, Hike One, in which you can find the pros and cons of every platform. And we decided eventually to choose Zero Height because it has quite rich functionalities. You can do a lot of things in Zero Height in terms of changing the fonts and also the elements of the design system itself. You can even implement code, I think, in it to a certain extent. And for us, it was, of course, also very good that they were free to a certain point. So that's why we integrated the whole design system into this tool called Zero Height. And I would also recommend you to start exploring this tool if you are in a company that has to make a decision about the design system. It's quite nice. So what was the effect of design system? Well, the most important effect, immediate effect, I would say, was that most discussions that we previously had on taste and design were pretty much ended. So that was a huge relief. It saved us a lot of time. I really noticed that especially the more technical people now had this single source of truth in the design system. So whenever there was a argument on designs, they would also always almost automatically refer back to the design system itself. And if you start working on the design system, you also adopt this sort of third-party perspective or this objective perspective on your own offering or your own online solution. And for us, this meant that we would completely review the application again, as we almost as if we were starting the whole project again. And we saw that there were, of course, quite a lot of inconsistencies and areas that deserved some improvements. And one of those improvements was in our core module, the basic trading or transaction module, in which we basically reduced multiple steps to just a single step. And that sounds very nice, but we were happy to hear that most of our users were also satisfied with this new approach, this reduction of steps. There were some more conservative users, but the overwhelming majority was more or highly more satisfied with the new approach and the new design. I'm not gonna mention all the comments, but you can see it here. And how much effort did it take to come to this result? When you are talking about the design system, it sounds quite big because of the word system, but for us, it was actually not as big as we expected. It was quite a considerable effort to come to the design system. I would say between the period of September 2019 and February 2020, it costed us around 40 working days. Within those 40 working days, we had almost 80% of the content finished. You have to make a decision for yourself if you think this is a lot of effort or not. But me personally, I expected this to become a larger project than it was, and the impact was quite high. So for us, it was really a good decision. Finally, we of course are not finished. We still have 20% to go, and all the updates coming later. One of the areas in which we want to extend our design system is in the mobile area. We launched a mobile app a year ago, and although we did highlight some of the typical mobile UX in the design system, I think we have not spent enough attention in there yet to fully cover the whole mobile part of our business, because it does require some different form of logics and gestures and stuff like that. So that's an area in which we're going to extend the design system in the coming months. And finally, as I mentioned before, we will continue updating the design system until we're basically out of business, because and let's not hope we are out of business soon. And so there's plenty of more work to be done, but good fun. So that was it, I think, for our presentation about the design system. I leave the floor to either Maria or Angos.
This presentation, what you are following, will be sent out to everybody, so you can check it out whenever you find it appropriate for yourself. And now we will have the discussions with all of the panelists, whom I would introduce shortly, that you would know whom you are listening to. First of all, Eward Bartlema, you already know. So and he's dealing with growth and UX in TreasurUp. Another of our special panelist is Martin Schachinger. He is managing director and co-founder of FinnoConsult. FinnoConsult is a company having its headquarters in Austria, and it's focusing on financial innovation, creating prototypes, focusing business concept, UX, and creating all of these things mostly for banks, but other financial clients as well. So thank you, Martin, for coming here today. Another of our panelists is Glenn Stevens. He's from Belgium, and he's dealing with UX research and service design in Belfius Bank, and also is working together with our Belgian UX partner UFlow, having its headquarters in Antwerp. Glenn, see you. Another of our panelists is Balázs Benkovic. He's director of digital channels and architecture at K&H Bank in Hungary, which is basically KBC Hungary as well. Who know other KBC entities. We're working together with Balázs for a while on different kind of business banking interfaces. Another our panelist is Gergely Tyukody. Gergely is working as a managing director of OTP Abyss platform. Abyss is basically a financial platform with what and small enterprises, they can handle their financial issues and also their accounting. They can manage with this, and Gergely is managing this company. Also, we're working with him together for many years. So thank you, Gergely, for coming here. And also Maria will participate in the conversation who is a senior architect in our company, Ergomania. So thank you very much for all of you joining this conversation. And let's start with the first question. Everybody's ready? Okay. So my first question to you, that like UX is getting more and more important for a while for retail financial interfaces. So like we have seen major projects having UX components like 10, 15 years ago, but like at least in Ergomania we noticed that like this direction is changing a little bit in that case, that like business financial interfaces for companies basically are getting more important. And I would ask you that what's your opinion about this? This is really happening, or it's just like seemingly happening, but in reality not? So I would be very curious that like what do you think that like whether kind of UX or user-centric revolution is happening in this field also, or it's not yet happening? So what do you think about that?
Maybe then shall I start if nobody would like to, and let me allow me.
Well, I just go on, take the word.
Okay, someone needs to start. So
Yes.
based on my opinion, it's happening definitely. So I as I see it, the trend coming from basically from retail, and initiated originally by the big techs, as far as I can remember this. So like Google, Apple, Facebook changed how people look at and expect from an application. This is now coming this way. I mean, into the company's way. People think that if me as a private individual get that I can work with whatever app easily and effectively, and things are organized around me in a logical way, then it makes me impatient or even frustrated when not getting the same service as a member of a company. And what I see is that fintechs are already onto this, and financial institutes are or will be following them shortly. So this is a train you must board, my opinion. If you make a distinction between the SMEs and the corporates, I mean the corporate segment, which is the top of the business banking. In corporate segment, I don't see this that critical at the moment, because what I see is big companies' internal processes are also more complex, and they use typically a bunch of applications, both old, new, whatever. So in a mixture of applications. So the UX an employee perceives is rather diverse. And therefore the UX expectations towards a particular application, and this particular application can be the application of a bank or a financial institute, are not that sharp at the moment, but it will be sharper, believe me. So this will come. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that maybe then in this segment you should not focus on UX at the moment, because value can be given here as well. Just an example that so the corporate products are usually more complex, more diverse. The portfolio a company is using from banks product portfolio. Providing an easy to understand and logic UI can make a learning curve more steep for new employees of that company, and thus you can make that company more effective. And this is something a company is grateful for. So you can sell them services if you treat like real customers there and would like to benefit them. And well, yes. In general, I would say that the people change, and nowadays there is less and less skill, or I would say will, to understand complicated things when they can be done simpler. And the people are usually not investing that much time and energy anymore to understand such things, but rather move on and most probably they're going to move on to one of your competitors. And I think that is why basically UX matters in these segments as well.
Balas, I do agree with your central premise about how B2C UX experiences are driving expectations. And last month, I think Kate Moran from Nielsen Norman Group, they wrote a study about how, on average, the return on investment and the general improvements UX brings to the table is shrinking. Now, this sounds bad, but it's actually really good. It means that UX professionals have done their job, and the extra advantage from good to great is smaller than from very bad to decent. However, the most of this evolution has been done in the B2C retail sphere. And I do believe that this is coming, and it has started in the B2B sphere as well. And I am very optimistic about what this can bring, because a lot of companies today, it's not that the focus on efficiency or productivity is new. They have been focused on that for many, many years, and making their workflows error-proof, especially when it comes to finance and administration and other important decisions. However, in the past, it has been driven by this, I'd say, industrialist mindset, where people are treated as factors of productions and have to adapt to the system. Where what we as UXs can bring to the table, it is this pure focus on human experiences and their unique capabilities based on the principle that is the systems and the machines that should adapt to the people and not the other way around. And I'm confident that this will gain extreme productivity, efficiency, and employee experience advantages in the near future.
And we should not forget for corporate, it's actually corporate people are used to use SAP as a user experience. And whoever uses SAP as user experience, basically you can do anything you want with them because it's completely horrible. So the revolution in banking started with the neobanks with retail customers. They are quite good already. There's now Holby for small companies or other such startups, but for the big companies, there's really the biggest room for improvement, I would say.
Yeah, let me add a few more words. At TreasurUp, we of course are moving into a segment of the larger corporates. We actually talked with 400 of them in the past couple of years. And we all have some assumptions of how a large corporate operates. But to our surprise, a lot of large companies actually do not work in a very professional way if you're talking about the financial stuff that we are dealing with. So we were actually surprised that most of the treasurers that we talked to, even from the larger companies, were still working with Excel sheets and still made a lot of errors in their day-to-day task. I still recall this semi-public institute that was very large, and we went there in their office, and they just explained me how their processes worked, and we were doing the math, and we were discovering major critical things, errors basically, or maybe missed opportunities, to put it more mildly. And rooms for improvement. But those corporates and those end users are not really used to fancy UI or good UX. That doesn't mean there's no market for it. We try at least to do it every day to introduce basically the consumer UI or UX experience into this conservative market. And we see that the adoption rates are actually quite high. And if the adoption is high, you can prevent even the largest corporates from making big mistakes, and that's really the value of our work.
If I may add a couple of comments, then I'm from András mentioned me that I'm managing director of OTP, which is a subsidiary of OTP Bank, big Hungarian bank. So I would like to emphasize that also in the bank, I mean, we so I have a position also in the bank, so I have two different views on that. So we established a small company and a subsidiary dealing with businesses and digital solutions for SMEs and corporates, because we realized that in a big bank, in a big organization, it's very difficult to push through all the necessary changes that is required if you want to develop good solutions for anybody. So this is a kind of startup view, that you all know. But on the other hand, we established this startup company, or startup-like company. It's not completely startup, for developing services for SMEs and corporates. We're one of the first ones doing this, and what we also realized that from the banking point of view, it's like the mass market is the retail. So if you want to make digitalization and innovation, you have to address the people or the mass market, because there you have the more revenues. And then in corporates, there are a couple of big deals, much less transactions. So you can assume that the people who are using the softwares doing the banking business in corporate side, they already get used to it, they educate. This is all the things that you mentioned with SCP and all the other stuff. But that, people really are learning, and it takes a lot. But for them, it's also required. But first is having more clients. More clients are in retail, and so we have to be first in retail. So that's the bank's point of view, as I see. But right now, the retail digitalization is really widespread, and then we have to turn towards SMEs and corporates, because big corporate solutions are, it's really difficult to sell, to have a lot of clients. So if you start to develop and lots of users, so this is why SME we are going toward an SME sector, I believe. And then if we have the solution, we try to enlarge it and open it to the corporate side. So from the banking view, at least from our banking view, this is something that happens, and this is how we approach the issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I would go to the next question, I'm launching a poll about this topic. So I asked the audience that if you want to join this, you can express your opinion through this poll. So basically, you can express your opinion. And our second topic is what I would touch that as far I got the impression, we are agreeing in that something is really changing in this sphere. So you might disagree about the colors and the shades of this change, but obviously it's happening. That what are the companies you think that are more advanced regarding these interfaces? Who are the role models in this field? Because if you're talking about retail, everybody is mentioning I don't know, Europe Revolut. If you are a bit more into this topic, you mentioned Tinkoff, Monzo, N26, Boom, whatever. But there are some obvious role models on this field, and also you can name some banks who are a bit more advanced than the others. But do we have a kind of role models in this field also, somebody who are bringing a torch, or everybody is just in the dark? Just we know that there is some light and we want to get out from the dark place. So how do you feel, and what do you think about this?
So if no one starts, I would say I already mentioned Holvi as a good example for smaller companies, or basically one-person companies. And recently I looked at Penta, also mostly in Germany. They are now focusing on a little bit bigger companies where you have more than one employees, where you have company accounts, where you have a more complicated invoicing system and also taxes. That's the thing. So the wave really moves from retail customers to larger and larger companies, and that to me is a very good example, moving from Holvi now to Penta, and hopefully bringing the very good user experience afterwards to bigger and bigger companies. That's how I would see it as examples.
You mean that the change is starting from companies who are serving like smaller companies, and it goes the change step by step to higher levels? You mean?
Yes.
Okay.
An example I'd like to give in a context like this is going a bit down the path of history and looking at Intuit. We know them today of, say, QuickBooks in the B2B sphere, but it all started out with Mint. And in fact, a lot of the impact and the importance and the acceptance even of UX has started there as well. And before Intuit bought Mint, Mint was a startup, and they bought a set of technology themselves. They did not invent the personal financial management features. What they did, and what their only differentiator was in the experience layer above those functionalities. They did not have more features than other tools available at the time. They just did it better. And it was a case study in the sense that it's not about a what, it's not about a feature factory and doing more than another company can do. It's about a how. It's about the experience you provide. And they did this for a financial tool, and they kept using this approach, and they conquered the world, basically. And this has been a lesson for many companies who followed in their tracks, like SAP, that UX as a competitive advantage in financial contexts is extremely important, at least as important as the context that we've all grown so accustomed to, being the retail B2C context. And I often think back about this Mint example because it is one of the best case studies of the importance of UX you can find out there. And to answer your to answer your question about companies that I think are really advanced, I'd like to shout out to a couple of Belgian companies as well. I've been using a tool called Accountable myself that lets me digitize all of my administration, all of my financial administration, all of the invoices, those little receipts. I can aggregate my bank accounts. It's great. Odoo is really taking Belgium by storm and digitizing accounting as well. We have Isabel, quite a special company invented by the banks, but in fact, an aggregator of bank accounts that is decades old, like PSD2 avant la lettre. Like literally, it's existing for decades, and it had been aggregating accounts across companies, across banks for a very long time. Emasphere, Silverfin, lots of innovation going on in the financial sector in Belgium. I am forgetting a lot, and there are a lot I don't know yet, but it's really interesting to see such a small country really trying to get a foothold.
We started to talk about, I don't want to mention a specific company, I'm sorry for that, but yes, what rose is that this PSD2 and open banking issues will make it possible that many startups can start to focus on bringing some opportunities on the corporate banking side. Especially, I think big tech companies can also start to do some financial offers, to prepare some financial offers to clients, and it's really like I mean, if the banks, I mean, don't keep on and develop their own new and better UX designed internet banks, then probably they will lose it, because the interface, the user interface will be provided by third-party solutions. So it's like we can name all the others that Glenn just mentioned. In Hungary, we also have a couple of them. We can mention on the same one, Xero, that we also mentioned. You also mentioned Holvi previously. So there are a couple of directions, and especially those will be successful will try to integrate banking financial services and other business administration services. So this is the direction when you don't just give them that let's say money transfer and applying for loans and this kind of pure banking business, but you think over and offer beyond banking services, that those companies will be the first. And in order to be able to serve the clients, then probably you will need very, very good user experience, because for regular and as in the SME market, the knowledge, I mean, the financial knowledge or financial products can be more complicated for a regular user than for in the retail. So this is why UX will be very important there.
If I might join to both of you, so Gergő and Glenn, for me the UX can be a bit broader than what the user perceives when they are working with a certain application. But to me, UX also that what problem of the customer this particular application is giving a solution to, and I think the most successful companies, and also I have a few examples here in Hungary, for example, these online billing companies, they are quite successful, but they are not successful because they are created the best billing application on the market. But they are successful because they understood that how the billing is part of the operation of a company, and they can helping their clients optimizing the whole end-to-end process and completely supportive process as billing. So that has nothing to do with the core competencies or the core processes a company is doing. But of course, it's essential for keeping the company alive. So it's a supportive process. They completely eased it up and reduced the necessary workload a company needs to put into reconciliating these invoices, and also a lot of extra stuff which goes beyond billing.
So absolutely, Balázs, that's an excellent point. I think it would be a mistake in terms of your innovation success to limit yourself to a small task at hand, because people have their habits, and if you just marginally improve on something, say improve a little bit on how they solve it today using Excel, you will not have market success. But as you mentioned, if you take a broader look and offer an end-to-end solution, even automating things that today are still manual, offer a solution for a larger problem, that is when you can really achieve success. And by helping people really gain time, you make their work more enjoyable by focusing on the important stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's a kind of same approach at different level where you are targeting the problem. So like you can improve your UX that if you make better screens or this kind of things, and what Balázs is talking about, to go much deeper and to understand the context of what you are agreeing that like this is also service design and UX, that like you shape the setup and you don't focus on just like where you should put this button or whether it should be green or red. So both of them are part of the profession, just it's a much deeper understanding and much deeper approach, because if it's not okay, you can create nice interfaces what might work in the small context, but if they don't work in the bigger context, it's no use. Eward, do you want to add something to this topic?
Well, if your question is what are the most advanced companies regarding financial business UX, I'm tempted to say TreasurUp, so I'm not. But in all seriousness, there are quite a few companies that we look at, but they are usually targeted towards the SME market, like Adyen, for example. The payments providers, those are quite advanced already. Then you have a large chunk of companies that are doing a good job, technically speaking, but maybe do not pay attention that much to UX. So, of course, I won't mention those names, but I think there's still room for improvement when it comes to really leaders in UX in the upper segment of the market.
Okay. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, we have the result of the poll also. I will just check it out. What's the result? Like most of the people were answering. We had 30 responses from the audience, and 60% of the people were telling that like it's important to focus on better UX in this field to make better profit, actually. So like if you are improving these interfaces, obviously your customers will be happier and they will spend more money. Also, we got votes on the other fields, like leaders or the administrators are demanding this, like 13% we got on this. And also same amount of people was telling that like retail is good, so it's time for new challenges, basically. And nobody was thinking from our audience that we should not improve on this field and there is no motivation to go further. So it seems that in that respect, we are agreeing with the audience as well. My next question is about that we're talking about that like retail is already on this boat, and like companies who are serving business clients are joining. Do you think that there is any bigger difference between serving retail customers in the financial field and serving companies, or it's pretty the same, just it's just not happening? So like these are new softwares, these are new applications, but we have to have exactly or very similar the same approach. What do you think about this? Or there is a special UX or a special approach for business clients?
Well, yes. There is a difference between individual people and companies, and then there is a difference between companies as in themselves, right? So I think that we've already talked a bit about the difference between UX for individuals versus UX for professionals and for companies. So if it's okay, I'd like to zoom in to the differences in that spectrum of companies, right? Because it is a very large continuum. You all the way from, say, the local bakery around the corner and the mom and pop shops with maybe a couple of employees, but all of the financial tasks are still being done by the owners, all the way up to a multinational conglomerate with thousands of financial employees. And in between are all of these mid-sized companies and scale-ups and companies that used to be startups and are growing. And that to me is extremely interesting, and one of the things that makes my job in B2B UX quite rewarding. And it isn't simply about the entities, the companies, but also, and that's whereas UX we are interested in the users, the people working in those companies. Say, for example, the bigger a company is, and I'm sure Eward, with the research he has done, can confirm this, the bigger companies, the more you tend to see dedicated financial roles. Like you have a head of treasury, he's got tons of treasurers below him. And then in a smaller company, in terms of organization, not in terms of turnover per se, but in a smaller organized company, you often have one person doing treasury, but also being the de facto head of accounting, also doing the financial management and administration. They've got all of these different hats on, and they never have one focused financial task. So there's this huge difference between how companies are structured, how people inside those companies can work, and you have to account for this in the solutions we make. And that is where a lot of challenges lie. Like, what software do you provide? Do you build the same piece of software for the bakery and the conglomerate? Probably not. But where do you draw the line? How do you deal with these different tasks and needs? That to me is one of the most interesting aspects of doing UX for these type of people, being professional clients.
Yeah, I fully support that, Glenn. I think the larger the company is, the more complex usually their financial processes, as you described, and also, that requires often a more complex interface and even customizable interface. Whereas in the smaller companies, as you described it, sometimes we meet a CFO who is indeed also responsible for hedging and all the smaller processes. And he, for instance, he's really using our mobile app, for instance, because he's on the road all the time. He's also somebody that meets the client. So he's not in the office all the time, unlike in the bigger companies that have a dedicated team, as you described it. Those people are basically stuck to their desk, and they are probably required by their internal governance to only do this kind of work in the setting of an office.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, talking about the internal governance, that's another interesting difference, right? Because the problem is often we are not selling to our users, because that's the easy thing in B2C UX. You have an app store, things can go viral. If you build something that's really good, things tend to get adopted at some point if it's worth it. Not so in B2B UX. Like, you can build a tremendous tool, but you're still bogged down by procurement processes, by the fact that offboarding is incredibly difficult, by the fact that even though a tool can be extremely bad, the retention of that tool is still really big, because thousands of people are forced to use the tool, and the only way to stop using the tool is by leaving the company. So it is way more difficult to sell your product, because often you're not selling to the users, you are selling to decision makers, and you have to make the point about productivity, employee satisfaction, etc. It's completely different, not just to UX, but also as a company leader, how you're gonna try and market your tool to companies instead of to users directly.
Yeah.
And there is one big.
Yes.
Go ahead, Martin.
We should also not forget the level of automation, because for bigger companies, mostly you will have just files moving through and from the bank, and they will go mostly into the accounting systems or financial systems of the companies, and then they will not have a user experience per se, because they basically use their own systems filled with the data they receive from the bank. So there, with bigger companies, it's really getting more complicated regarding user experience and interaction with the bank.
And one of the points that we are touching, it's basically user management and authentication and authorization, which is very much in the back office, not in the front end, but you have to manage it in a user-friendly way. So how you give different roles and authorizations for an individual, a sole entrepreneur, a small company that has an accountant who is a kind of not an own finance, not even, who doesn't have even an own financial employee, and two companies that you mentioned with big corporates where they are with full financial department, and you still want to offer them the tool that they can set up the roles and authentication, authorization of the users. So this is the back, or this is in the background that you have to cover in the very beginning, because otherwise it's just I believe very much that a CFO in a big corporate would be not happy that somebody approves a transaction without a certain authorization for that. So yeah. This is where it starts, and then
sometimes. Go on. I think sometimes you have to be a bit bold when it comes to user management and authorization levels, especially in the higher companies, because we did basically a survey and we went to those companies to see, all the different roles, and we came up with a list of literally like 50 different combinations. So it was undoable. If we would present these options to the majority of our users, they would get crazy.
Yeah, but for retail clients, you don't need that much function separately, because a couple of person does and even for small companies do all the transactions, and you need to give the different roles. And yeah, in a bank or in a big organization, it could be like, as you mentioned, like 50 different roles, all different functions might be required different person to approve.
If I might add something that has not been discussed yet, I agree with all of you what you mentioned, and basically, yes, these companies from UX point of view also, yes, differ. But what I observed is that trends and changes are coming in waves, and they are usually starting from retail. And then these trends are then moving into the corporate business and corporate segments, and converging them over time. So what I mean, for example, I can still remember then I was first intern bank application was a Windows-based application. I had to download it. I even had to exchange some codes with my bank, and that was quite common in corporate banking at that time. So that was these terminals, and then retail moved into the internet banking era, and corporate area started to follow them a couple of years later on. Now corporates are absolutely okay with using internet-based solutions, but I remember that some of the corporates told us that we are not trusting internet because it's not safe, it's not secure for banking with us. We remain with our application-based, Windows-based application-based banking. And now retail is moving towards mobile, and still there is some adoption of mobile in corporates, but not that major as in retail, but still more mature than 2 or 3 years ago here in Hungary. So I'm not saying that SMEs and corporates are the same, but these trends always finds their ways more or less into the top segment of this business as well. And just one more thing to this, what we experienced that this convergence has been sped up heavily due to this pandemic in recent months and years. So, for example, electronic document exchange gained a very, very much popularity among corporates in the recent months because corporates find it difficult to do or arrange businesses on paper, and they wanted to switch. Otherwise, I would say it would have taken years till we reach this level where we are at the moment.
The last point is very interesting that you just mentioned, and I like it very much because the good thing in this pandemic situation that we are having is that it forces digital innovations that some people and some organizations, even in big ones, wanted to do, but because of regulations of regular business, just the attention is not there. But right now, everybody, in order to continue business, it is forced by the pandemic situation, and hopefully many of the innovations or changes that we have done in the last couple of months then will be kept, because there are some organizations that say, okay, it was just special times, and right now we should go back. But really, the good thing is that also the regulations changed a lot. So this kind of new innovate, it has a big effect on regulations and lobbyists and people who are making really the laws, and so many times in corporate business it's the regulations that don't allow you to make that kind of innovation that is really required. But right now it seems that we are going to get better era from this point of view.
Okay. Thank you. My last question regarding our discussion afterwards, we are going to check that whether there are some questions from the audience, what we should cover. My last question is that, in which areas you are expecting the biggest changes, like which business segments, because SME or corporate or business banking, it's a huge field still. So we're talking about this as one field, but in reality, it's not. So where do you think that there will be this, the first victories of this revolution or changes in the next years? I launched also a poll for the audience to think about this topic, but I'm curious about the panelist opinion as well. So we'll start first.
I have to let you sign an NDA for the answer.
Okay. You can skip it.
In general terms, I would believe that in the areas of machine learning, like the technologies, we could see quite a rapid adoption in the coming years. Of course, a lot of people are pointing toward blockchain. do not fully comprehend blockchain yet, so I do not wish to burn my fingers on that topic. But to me personally, the area in which we would see the most improvements or the most developments would be in the new technology.
Well, if we're talking about new possibilities, I'd like to add the entire concept of open everything, open banking, platform banking and APIs, partnerships, connecting. Because just think of all the tasks that could foreseeably be automated in a connected world. And I think then as a company who wants to have success, or as an incumbent bank, for example, who wants to avoid the risk of being disenfranchised, you better start connecting, because I do believe that in a large part, connections, automation will make the classical channels where companies and users meet more and more obsolete. Just to throw some examples out there, think about bank accounts. Today you have to go and check them in the bank's software. They could just be read by the accounting software and the treasury software. PSD2 will make that more and more possible. But it doesn't have to stop with accounts. We can go to credits. Imagine that your treasury software could know when is the credit coming due, what is the amortization, what money every month do I have to pay, or more importantly, do I have some sort of straight loan, some money I can use when there is a deficit that my treasury tool is pointing me towards? Same with investments. There is so much. And this is where the biggest difference will be made between taking away time demanding things that don't really add much joy to the work, so people can spend less time doing that and spend more time doing their actual work. Like a quote that stuck with me when I did an interview, he said, well, ideally I would start my day by having a report and then making my financial decisions based on that report. But the reality is I have to spend half of the day making the report, like aggregating all of the sources and manually entering them in my Excel file before I can start making those decisions. So I believe companies that can facilitate this automation, they will get a step ahead, because at some point this will become table stakes. This will become the new normal. And if you're not there by then, it can be quite risky, I think.
I agree with your point. I just don't believe that we are already there. So these are the directions that we are heading to. From our own view, is like we wanted to do some kind of similar solution, like started like 4 or 5 years ago. We started to think about that, and it's still. I mean, this is the year when people started, or SMEs and corporates started to went into the fact that okay, we should go more into digital solutions, and we should start business and business administration on digital platforms and not in our own computer and not connected. But on the long run, it's definitely it will be there, and everything will be connected. Ecosystem will be born with connected different softwares and solutions for every different needs. I very much believe, but right now it's still, I think we are in the we're still in the beginning. Until onboarding and regular payment is not solved, then we cannot. Well, of course, we can leapfrog and then just overtake a couple of steps, but it's not very common that it happens. So I very much believe that this basics and immediately when the most advanced companies can already go into the direction that you mentioned and towards this ecosystem type of operations.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, it's gonna take a while.
Yeah.
If I look forward for the next couple of years, I expect new developments mostly on areas that can be mutually beneficial for the client and for the financial institutes as well. Don't forget that this pandemic has left a mark on the economy heavily. Also, financial institutes are also affected, and of course, a lot of other areas as well. And cost efficiency and saving is also a primary factor for these companies to get healthy again and at least mitigate the effect they suffered. So the functions that can result not just better UX for customers, but also provide efficiency improvements and faster, cheaper internal processes for banks. I think that these will be the areas that will be key in a couple of years innovation. For example, self-service functions for companies as well, and or sales automation. I can think of this kind of functions here.
Martin, your
And
view?
to add, yes, just to add something, I fully agree with the functions, but looking also at the target customer group, I think the next group to come is really bigger sized medium companies. So they are not covered by startups yet. They are not the main focus of the banks, because the banks mostly focus on the larger accounts, but the companies in the middle, I think they should be the focus for the next years in this area.
Okay, anything more to add to this topic, or everybody said what wanted to say? Because if not, I would just check quickly the result of the poll. Like most of the people from our audience are expecting changes regarding new innovations, like we were using as an example voice or blockchain, but of course you can mean under this automation and other topics as well, what was mentioned. And around fifth of the participants was voting on payments that it should improve, or onboarding. And some people were thinking that landing or internal interfaces should improve, but it was much smaller number. And checking or questions from the audience that are not answered. We have basically some questions what we could touch quickly because our time is more or less over. We have one question from and I think it's the best that only just one of you answers the question who feels closest to his soul or heart. This one, it's from Marta. What is your take on cross-interface UX? For example, website/app, computer/smartphone.
I would be happy to have a go, if that's okay. This is a question we often have to solve. Because one of the clients I work with is a big bank, and they have their omni-channel. And then the question often is, okay, this feature we're thinking about creating or improving, do we make it for desktop or the app or both? Knowing, of course, that when you go the omni-channel route, it's always more expensive, it's slower. So what do? The answer is always the same. You research the task at hand. You try and see what is happening today, which channel is the channel of preference, and is that happening well? Or are there roadblocks, frustrations, pain points, unmet needs? And then you make sure that you build the task where it is served best. To give you an example, say you have I think this example was given earlier. You have a CEO or a CFO, and she needs to sign a large transaction. Often that is on the go. The CFO might be in China for a business trip. She needs to be able to do this there with one click of the button. But then the people in charge of preparing all of these payment files, they tend to do this in a desktop context. It would be quite useless to offer this feature on mobile. It would be expensive and it would not be used. And this is a quite obvious example, but often it's more nuanced. And a little bit of research can pay dividends in saving you the costs of building a feature somewhere where it isn't useful. So that would be my take. Just research it and find out where it is best served.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wants to add to this topic? Okay, so last question, what I would pick from the audience question is from Nick, and he's asking that what provisions have you made for voice recognition technologies within the UX interface? Who wants to pick this topic? If
So talking about corporate banking, I don't really see it at the moment. We did a prototype in retail for an insurance company, and even there the technology is not completely there. You have come to rethink the user interface, not just to create that it has the intelligence to give good answers and really works. So at the moment, especially in corporate, I don't see it. I think it will slowly start in retail, but even there it has some starting problems.
Okay. Anybody else? I know that Gerge, you had some views about this topic also, but I don't know whether you feel connected to this question.
Yeah, we are a little bit away from that. So yeah, I'm very much a fan of this solution. Really, it's like András, we had a couple of times conversations about this. So yeah, I very much believe that it is going to happen. I mean, if you just it's more useful right now in the retail segment. I very much believe if you just look on Amazon, Alexa, and then the Siri and all the kind of things. I mean, it's more useful right now. I mean, we have more applications and solutions in retail, kind of, not maybe not in business, but also just in everyday life than using it in business. So and these kind of security issues might be not already the best ones that of banks security, how we call it, bank security department would allow complete solution, kind of voice solution. So, but yeah, we are investigating, and I very much believe that it is going to happen. But I think that we're a couple of years from there until it will be.
For example, for just like I don't know, more repetitive actions, like for example, approval might be.
Okay, we have some projects on that that the call center should be there. Well, part of the call center could be done with some kind of interface. So it's very much I agree. But like I was thinking about having a kind of voice first internet banks kind of solution. When that was my first part of the answer, but in other, I mean, certain functions, I very much believe it can be useful for. But from the bank side, it's like the other point. If you just change the current interfaces and the chance, especially in the contact center, call center, then you lose the chance to sell any other products to the client if you use if you integrate some kind of machine learning and data analytics, then even you can be more successful. So I think it's a complicated story. We should start to think about that. But again, in the mainstream, I mean, there is no like one big solution that should be the leader and all the banks should be following right now.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think slowly our time is over, so I don't want to keep longer the audience. We have still two more questions, one from Laura and another one from Malta. Actually, after this more formal panel discussion, we will have a non-formal opportunity to talk with each other on the WonderMeet platform, as I was telling in the beginning. So whoever has some more time, please join us on WonderMeet. My colleagues will post the link into the common chat. So if you just click on that, you snap a photo of yourself, you can come and talk more or less in that way. If you would have a table and a setup afterwards this talk, and you could find the sympathetic people for you, or you could hit on one of the panelists to ask some deep dive questions. So both of them you can do, and we just show quickly how it looks, that you would have an image. So you have these avatars, and when the avatars are meeting, you can set up a conversation, and there could be many private conversations. So basically this is how it looks, and we're testing on our several events. So it's, of course, it's very different than to be on a live event and having our drinks, juice, beer, prosecco, whatever, but still you can have your drink and join us there. Also, we will show a questionnaire. So like we are very curious about your feedback, whether you liked our event, what's your opinion, what we should or what we can improve. So if you snap on this QR code or we post a link also, you can basically share your feedback. And this was our last event this year, and we are very grateful and happy that apart from being this pre-Christmas period that like you joined us. And of course, we know that it's a bit different periods. So like usually this time we have the company parties, gatherings in restaurants and so on. So probably you have more opportunity to join online events. So we were trying to hit on this opportunity this year. But hopefully in the future, we will see you on our online event. And we hope that sooner or later we will have some physical events either in our headquarters Budapest or we're having earlier on other sites also in Vienna, and we are planning to have in Benelux also Amsterdam and Brussels is on the list where we want to have physical events. We will have hopefully opportunities for that. And I'm very thankful for our panelists that they would sacrifice their valuable time and they were having a talk with us. It was a real pleasure. And I hope that soon we'll meet in person or digitally with them and with you as well. And we're expecting to have our next event around in February. We are still selecting between the topics, and you will be informed what will be that and that you could join us. Thank you very much again. And thank you for the team also, like Maria and Milan who was helping us. So thank you very much. And see you there at WonderMe or see you at the next event. Just like Maria, you would show the whole team also. Like Maria, you have already seen, and like our colleague Milan is coming into the picture.
Hi guys, thank you for coming.
He was behind the scenes and helping all the things to smooth, or if it was not smooth, to fix it as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.